3, 2, 1, go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the real first ever episode of the Deadlock Load podcast. It's been a little bit of work in the makings, but we've made it. So thank you all so much for being here. My name's Cryptic. I'm here with BSJ Banana Slam Jam. What's up, Brad? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, dude. I'm excited. It's been a while. It's been a while since I saw you. We used to live together. I know that we were gonna intro ourselves and everything, but I feel like it's long overdue that we did something. So it's cool to have a way in a new game, new setting to see what happens, you know?
Yeah, it is, man. It's fun, and what a better way to do it than over like our new favorite game,
Yeah,
Deadlock,
absolutely.
which has been absolutely incredible. So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. It's a little bit long overdue. It feels like it was inevitable that we'd end up doing something together, and this will be a good way to start it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact about Deadlock, I think the reason we're going to go more into detail later, but we both kind of got that itch tickled about, how Dota made us feel when we just started playing. And I personally hadn't felt it since then, which was like 12 years ago. And Deadlock just feels like it has all of the components of a game like Dota, for the efficiency and the high skill, the crazy comebacks, the plays. So much going on your screen, and it's like overwhelming but also amazing at the same time. So that's what Dota was always, and so I feel like that's what we're going for with the vibe of this game and what we love about it, or at least me.
absolutely, dude. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm absolutely with you on that. So we've got a few topics lined up for today, which we're excited to get into. So I think it's time we're gonna lock in, talk about who we are. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we make this podcast? Why, how did Deadlock and Load come to be? So do you want to kind of start on the why portion, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, the why portion would be that we feel like there's a lot to talk about here. Like, Dota as a game kind of gives you the whole nerd itch of like, oh, I want to talk about those mechanics. I want to talk about these plays. I want to talk about these heroes. There's just a million things to talk about. And we both like kind of had a catch-up chat, and we were both like equally enthusiastic about just the game as a whole, the potential that it has in the future. We felt like there's limited content out there that fits this description. We want to hear from like other people about what they like about the game, just kind of create a discussion space between us, obviously, but that is including the rest of the community, to just celebrate gaming as a whole, but especially through this game.
Yeah, I feel like it's like part of me just wants to be active in the Deadlock community as well. Like there's going to be so much going on over the next couple of years with this, I feel like, and with how often it's being updated. I was like trying to think like what would be a good way that people could stay like kind of in the loop of, what's happening. Like if you leave for a week in Deadlock, it's actually like months in Dota. Like it's kind of crazy how quick things can change. So I love it. I'm super excited just to see kind of what we come up with over the next, X amount of time as we work on the podcast and what kind of ideas we bring forward. But yeah, it's an exciting game. I think it's an exciting time for people who are just fans of Dota, because I think there's a lot of Dota in this game, and I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice not at least trying it to some extent, because I think it's fun. So it's a great time.
I mean, it combines like the two best genres, or at least the most popular genres, which are shooters and MOBAs. So I feel like, there's actually games where I'm like, okay, that guy's clearly a shooter player. He's like headshotting me and never CSing. And then there's guys that like are so focused on the creeps and never hitting me. And I'm like, okay, that's a Dota player or like a League of Legends player. So it's, for me, it's even like I'm even expecting like if I were to go back and play Dota like after a week or two of Deadlock, I would probably learn something different, and so it's getting to also apply the same skills in a very different setting, with different factors that are tied in. 6 heroes instead of 5, 4 lanes instead of 3. But at the end of the day, you feel it. You feel Ice Frog in there, Valve being the devs. I feel like if I was making Dota and I had 15 years more of game dev experience, and I was like, what's like the next step Dota 3-esque game? This is what they did. Like, this is what it feels like they were going for. And I honestly was skeptical. Like, I think one of the first things, I don't want to like take over the hosting job here, but I feel like one of the first things we said was, what was your first impression like of Deadlock? And me, I was skeptical. I saw it and I was like, eh? Like, what were you thinking when you watched it? Or was like,
so it's a little bit different for me because I come from a little bit of a different background in like the games that I've played and games that I've liked. So I was kind of sold immediately on the idea. I think when I first got into this game, it was a little while ago. It was like early June. So I've been playing for about 4 months. And I think at that point there was still a lot of like mechanics and stuff in the game that weren't super enjoyable. And a lot of it's been fixed. Like they took the user feedback from like everyone that was in the playtest at the time, and they fixed a lot of the things that were like kind of anti-fun, you know, like kind of just time sink and like not interesting mechanics, and they just removed them or updated and made them really cool and unique. And so yeah, I wouldn't say I was skeptical. I was more of like, I was excited and hopeful in a way.
Okay. I guess I was skeptical when I initially watched it, like because I started playing like the day after the playtest alpha went open to the public to create invites, and I guess like you're allowed to stream, I guess is what I mean. You're allowed to like stream it for content. So I watched it, and then I hadn't played it yet, and I was like, I'll just load it up to see what happens. Slacks was like raving about it, just saying how much he loves McGinnis and how he gets to play techies again and not actually play the game and not interact with people. You know, I was like, okay, fine. You know, I'll give it a shot. I know people like Dendi, Jerax, they were spending a ton of time playing this game as well. So, you know, if that many Dota players that are, I would say, that vastly different personalities are all hopping on that bandwagon, like, might as well give it a shot. So I tried to approach it with an open mind because after you watch it, it's the same thing as Dota, right? You're like, I have no freaking clue what I'm watching. And it's also like Dota in the sense that there's tons of hidden mechanics, there's tons of little min-maxing things to do, and it's like one of those things where if nobody does it, then it's fine. But like once you get better and better, you start to do these things, and the skill cap becomes very high. And so despite the fact that it's a shooter, I feel like somehow the skill cap is not as much about aiming, but like aiming matters, obviously, but it's much more about all of the intricate like slide dashes and like movements on the map and abusing verticality and all that. So I feel like I'm already nerding out more than I wanted to on the intro, but yeah, I mean that for me, I was skeptical for literally a day, and then the second I played like 3 games, I'm like, holy shit, this game's awesome. So
yeah, we'll dive more into like details of Deadlock in a bit, but yeah, you actually touched on it earlier in terms of like how we know each other, because people are probably like, who the heck are these guys? We actually met a long time ago, back in college. We convinced you to come hang out with our. It was
only
Dota
a year or two ago
team,
in college. Right? We're both like 24.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're in our early mid 20s still. Yeah, we met in college, and on our collegiate Dota 2 team. You know, we had some fun then, ended up becoming friends. We lived together for a few years. I don't know. I feel like it ended up. It's kind of weird how things turn out, but it was That's where it all started.
I'll give like the history one, like, you know, like 5-second history. It's gonna be 10 seconds or 20. I don't know. We met at Cal Poly Dota 2 Club. We ended up qualifying somehow to like the Dota 2 championships, and we all went to a freaking land in Texas as college students who were broke, couldn't afford anything. So we were super excited to do that. Kind of a bonding experience. We graduated. You were moving to Arizona for, I think, job reasons, and then I was living in Arizona. I had moved back there, and you're like, do you know anybody to live with, or like, do you have any ideas? And I was literally moving into a new place and needed a roommate right when you reached out to me. So we ended up living together for like 2-3 years, and then I ended up moving to New York around the time of COVID, and now I'm in the Netherlands. So I went from Arizona to New York to the Netherlands. Pretty huge, like, hop across the universe there. But the Dota makes the world small. Video games as a whole make the world small, and you know, we see each other at Dota events. We saw each other at TI. You know, we still like randomly collide online because of just general things surrounding Dota, and the fact that we can both celebrate a game like this with a podcast across the universe from each other, that's just pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it really is, man. It is kind of weird that like I like the idea that you said, like gaming makes like the world small. It is true. Like every time I go to like an event and I see all the people that we like interact with like regularly for work or just like as Dota players or streamers, it's like it's almost like no time has passed and you're just like, oh hey, like we were just talking the other day, but like now we're in person. It's fun. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'd say this is just a convenient / two birds, one stone way for you and I to catch up, celebrate a new game. We spent hours upon hours talking about Dota and just gaming as a whole back when we lived together. Yeah, I think part of my life recently has been a lot about creating conversation just about things that matter and finding other people that enjoy talking about the same things I do. And I think that setting is kind of what we're trying to create with this podcast about a new game. A lot of hype, getting updates all the time. Going to be new characters coming out all the time, I assume. So,
oh yeah,
there's going to be nonstop stuff to talk about, and that's honestly refreshing to just kind of have content create itself. Like that's interesting. I want to talk about that. Yeah, and getting to be creative around that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to, and this week specifically, we probably have like the hero update coming in Thursday, but we'll have to talk about that when we get there. Now, one of the things that you mentioned and I kind of touched on as well is like kind of our past in gaming. So for me, I come from a very different like gaming background, but I guess the funny thing is we both were huge fans of Gears of War back in the day, the original Gears of War 1.
Yeah.
But this was like my first esports game. Like I played this very competitively. This was like my love for shooters and third-person shooters specifically until I eventually get into like Heroes of New Earth, Dota 2 again, right? And then I don't know. You find games like Paragon, Crucible, Predecessor, Smite, like all these like third-person MOBA ideas that come out, and you're like, man, these are they're so cool, but it doesn't scratch that like same itch like you were talking about that you get with Dota. And then Deadlock comes out, and I'm just like, bro, this game is like, it almost feels like it is the dream for me in terms of like everything I've wanted in a game for so freaking long.
Yeah, I mean, the part about it for me is that my history with gaming is that I played tons of Gears. I played Halo, Call of Duty. Those are all like my beginning venture into my own Xbox. Like I had Nintendo games and all that kind of stuff. I've been a gamer my whole life. I never played competitive before Dota. But yeah, I mean, the last 12 years of my life have pretty much exclusively been Dota. I got like binged on it in college, ended up becoming a streamer, and content creator for Dota. I love teaching about Dota. I love teaching about things as a whole. I was an engineer in college, so it kind of like lines up with reverse engineering decision making and figuring out how to explain myself and my thought process. And part of what I love about Deadlock specifically is that in terms of mastering a craft, before Dota, I'd never really mastered anything. I was kind of the guy that was pretty good at everything, but never great at anything. And so Dota was kind of the first time I took enough time to really sit down, and it revealed my weaknesses of my character, of my mentality, of my mechanics, of like I had to overcome these things if I actually wanted to stay relevant and all that kind of stuff. And so also it's like rather than meeting people in Arizona, I'm compared to people all across the world. So if I don't keep stepping it up, then I'm just going to fall behind. And that's like a degree of competition that I think we're so lucky to have in the gaming community, is you just get to copy / learn from like literally anybody. Exactly. And
yeah,
also it's like, instead of, I used to play a lot of basketball, and it's like, imagine if I got to watch basketball from like the eyes of LeBron James, it's like I got to see him jump up in the air and dunk. And it's like, that's the beauty of learning and watching video games that I think is so cool, is that you get to actually see the spectator system in Dota as well. I'm sure Deadlock's going to get even better. About being able to learn and study and see like exactly enter the mind of. That's what really sold me on Dota, basically, was being able to actually enter the mind of the people I'm watching and say, what do I think they're thinking? What would I have done there? How would I have compared that? And basically, TLDR of what I just rambled about is applying all the things I learned from Dota in terms of getting better at something, and applying it to a new game that makes me equally enthusiastic to play the game. So, that whole process, I'm like, hey, I get to start over in a way that I've learned 12 years of things. So let's see how it goes. And yeah, it's just, I think learning to learn is what I love to do. And so I've never really gotten a chance to prove like everything I did in Dota meant something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I do. Like I know you've mentioned this before, like on streams and stuff, but it's like the way that you approach Dota, like we didn't really know back in the day, like when we first like booted up the game, or like we just kind of poke around and try to figure it out. But it's because we had absolutely no idea what it was, how to
Yeah.
play the game, or how to approach it. And it's like now that we've been playing Dota for so long and like other games for so long, it's like you come into Deadlock and you're like, I can approach this in a way that like is how you think is like the best way to approach it, or how you want to approach it, as opposed to just like hoping for the best, you know?
There's a large variance in like quote unquote efficiency or pace of learning when it comes to games or just anything in general. And it's like like two different people could play 1,000 games of Deadlock, and where they end up is going to be very different in terms of skill level. And also not just like, is one going to be better than the other, but the skills that they learn are going to be different because that's either what they chose to learn or their brain more thinks that way, what have you. And so like I remember in Dota there were a lot of like fundamental mechanics that I skipped over, thinking like I kind of knew they were there, and or maybe I knew they existed, but I never really dove deep and found out like what are they. And I played for like 5 years and people are like, BSJ, why don't you do this? And I'm like, well, like I don't have an excuse. I just didn't really take the time to like nerd out about it. And when I talk to all these professional Dota players, like I think the best privilege for me is that I know I haven't tried to be competitive for several years, but I get to watch Liquid scrims. I get to literally talk to the boys and ask them like, oh, I saw you did that. Like, what were you generally thinking? I'm not trying to make them reveal their secrets or anything, but hearing their thought process, it's not as much about the specific question. It's more about like, how did they come to that answer? And that part for me is what I'm trying to now do for like the average player, the person that's not trying to do this for a living. Because I just saw how eye-opening it can be to listen to somebody who thinks the way that these professional players do. And there's a reason. It's like, I've never listened to a professional Dota player talk about Dota and just be like, why is he good? Like, I've never thought that, you know?
You like get it. You're like, oh, that's why they're good. Immediately.
I see what he's saying. Like, I'll have to figure out how to get there myself. But yeah, exactly. It's never a surprise. So, I just don't think it's a coincidence when somebody learns really fast. And so I'm just trying to establish the habits of how do I learn faster. And that's what I'm going to be talking about for most of this podcast. Ricky will probably be doing his own version of this, but I'll probably nerd way too much out about learning the game as a whole.
All right, well, let's start out on Deadlock then. So Deadlock, the game is very I would say unique in its approach to this genre, like this third-person shooter, like MOBA genre. So I mean, do you want to give like your best attempt at trying to like describe what it is? And don't do the meme of like, oh, it's 80% Dota, 20% what, like, how would you, if someone were to come in and be like, I've never played this game, what is Deadlock? Like, how would you try to describe it to them?
I would try. Okay, so quick. Is this somebody who's played MOBAs or shooters, or is this somebody who's never played either? Like, what am I working with here? You know,
assume that they're a casual gamer, that they don't really play Dota, they know of it, but like maybe they play like COD or something, you know?
Okay. I guess if they've never really grinded a MOBA and they've played some shooters, because I think that is more of the casual gamer, I would say that, you know, going off of the meme that some people say it's 80% Dota, 20% shooter, the point is that it requires all of the skills of a shooter, like being able to aim. I think a lot of it's like spatial awareness, like where are people? There's a lot of 3D going on, and that uses the third-person camera. So it's a shooter in that regard, but what MOBAs require you to do is understanding like map positioning. You're more so thinking like you're working with the same map every single game. Each team has like a side, and I always called it reverse tug of war, where instead of pulling against each other, you're trying to push into the enemy's base and kind of create momentum by being stronger than them, doing more damage to them than they do to you, kind of like slowly grinding them down over time. And it's kind of like a resource battle. In Dota, it's gold and XP, and in Deadlock, it's souls. And so when you kill creeps and you kill objectives, you're getting souls. And it's like you get souls for killing enemies. But like when I play Call of Duty, most of the time, like other than like search and destroy where I'm trying to plant the bomb or something, or like in CSGO, it's like I first have to, the main priority is to kill the opponent. And there's times in Deadlock where I'm plenty of shooters, you hear them, they're like, I'm killing people and I'm still losing. And it's because there's tons of resources to gather. It's called farming, you know, that they're trying to be efficient. And the fact is you buy items. Like it's not like CSGO where you buy items at the start of the round and you play the round with guns and grenades and smokes and all that. You buy items as you get souls, so if you're not killing the creeps, if you're not killing the objectives, then it doesn't matter how good you are at aiming, the other guy's just going to kill you because he does way more damage and has way more health. So my TLDR is shooter skills with like the macro slash resource battle that a lot of these MOBA genres have. And even if you've never played a MOBA before, kind of knowing that like it's territorial, you're trying to invade certain areas, protect certain areas, you have a base. That aspect, I would say, guides the entire game. And if you don't understand that and you're new to it, you pretty much have to like, I'd say study that predominantly, at least understand like this is the most important part of the game, because no amount of skill can overcome the other guy just having way more items than you. So
yeah, I think when it comes, like that's a really good way to put it, right? And I think one of the things people look at is like KDA doesn't really matter in this game. Like it is very much like you can play a game, go like 20-0 and lose, like you said. Like it doesn't really matter how many kills you get. Yeah, it happens in Dota all the time. It happens in League. It happens in all the MOBAs, right? And it is one of those things that like the shooter skills are probably the hardest part to learn, and as like in a weird way, like even though it's not as like core to the game's mechanic, like in terms of like learning the overall game, the like aiming well and being able to like track your targets and stuff is a very difficult thing to learn. And you know, you build that just with repetition in a way. But it's the same thing with like the MOBA aspects of the game, right? Like you'll eventually build those kind of mechanics, that knowledge over time as you play. And we'll be talking about it a lot as we play, or as we do the podcast as well, like just kind of helping introduce these types of ideas and things to players, and hopefully, you know, make it easier for everyone to learn this game, because I think you and me both, like, we love this game. Like I love this game so freaking much. So it's yeah, it's cool to see what they've put together. And I think, like very quickly, like how would I describe it? Yeah, it's probably pretty close to you. I think it's just, I think it's going to take time for people to learn, and I would say don't give up on it immediately, because you're probably going to struggle right out of the gate if you're coming from like a shooter background, because you might just frag out in a game and own and then lose, and you're like, well, this sucks, like I didn't win, you know? But you know, if you're coming from a MOBA side and you can't hit a target and you're just like at least playing objectives, but you're just getting constantly ganked and killed, you're like, oh, you know, it's a little bit rough. Just give yourself a little bit of time to learn, be patient, because it will eventually catch on and you're going to love it.
Yeah, I guess for me, like one thing I did learn from Dota is that I prefer to play to improve rather than to win. And it's like eventually if you do improve, the wins come. And knowing that like losing is fine as long as like I tried to learn something that game and I feel like I got something out of it. The point is there's going to be the learning curve can be pretty steep in regards to the aim. For me, the spatial awareness part is like really hard. It's like
so hard.
There's a bunch of items there's a bunch of abilities and items that jump people all around your screen, and they're way up there, and some people are in the ground, and it's like some people are flinging you all over the place. So not only are they moving, but they're making you move against your will. You know, it's like that part for me. Like, there are times where I'm like, it brought me back to Dota. I remember in Dota when I got slept and then ulted by a Bane one time, where you're just slept for like 7 seconds and then Fiend's Grip for 7 seconds. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? And then like, I felt the same thing when I played against Viscous. I'm getting like punched up in the air and then punched to the side and hit by the ball. And I'm like, what the hell? like, where am I going? And then I'm like, Lash is like jumping off of me and flinging over and then flinging back. And I'm like, what does this guy's spell even freaking do? What am I seeing? And my screen's going like, like that. And the point is that I literally, this sounds kind of cop out of a description, but I feel like it's Dota on crack. Like I literally feel like all of the map awareness, MOBA aspects, efficiency, map movements, macro play that Dota has, it's like now throw in everything you just said, the shooting, the crazy amount of having to deal, like there's so much movement mechanics in this game.
Yeah, mobility is
huge. So yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it's just making sure that if you're newish to the game, I mean, most of us are, especially if you're new to MOBAs or shooters in general. If you're new to both, good luck. Very good luck. You'll get to learn two at one time. It's just important, I think, to keep in mind, like, I think Deadlock can still be really fun if you're like 2 and 15, like 2 kills and 15 deaths. I think it can still be a lot of fun if you kind of be like, oh shit, yeah. I just got punched out of the ground. What happened? And then I just read their skill and I'm like, oh, I see. Maybe I should try that. That looks fun. But yeah.
It's like the perfect playground in terms of like seeing cool stuff and learning cool things. And there's already a lot of depth to the game, which is surprising, right? Like considering it's quote unquote early, like early beta or late alpha, there's not really like a clear distinction on which one they're doing, right? But to me, it feels like it's in beta with how clean it is and how crisp it runs. There's still so many heroes coming out, but like each hero feels like a Dota hero in a way, right? Like where they all have like very unique play styles and personalities. And I think that's something that's like really important for these types of like the hero shooter genre in general, is like you kind of don't feel like an attachment to some of the heroes, right? You're just like, there's like, it's a tank, it just throws a shield up, whatever. Versus like tanks in this game are very different, right? There's multiple different styles of tanks already that exist, right? You have the goober himself, Viscus, who like is kind of a tank in the form of like his like cube and his ult.
Unless that voice is a man. Is that,
dude? I have no idea. Okay. It's an bro. I don't know.
Okay, Viscus isn't it.
And then you have like Abrams, who's like your typical tank, right? He's just a massive wall of HP who heals through everything, and you're just like, God damn, like what do we even do to deal with this guy? But I think the hero designs already are really cool, and I'm really excited to see like as they tweak them over time and as they add the various new heroes that are currently in development. I think it's just gonna make the game so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, I will say in Dota, one of the things that I loved is the hero personalities, and you do get attached. Like, everyone has favorites, and also the people's favorites said so much about them. It's like, okay, if that guy spams anti-mage and morphling, and maybe I don't want to be his friend. Like, just maybe, like, he's that kind of guy. And there's already that. People are like, on the Reddit post saying like it's always the 7 player, like it's always that guy that's like saying some completely inappropriate, depth of the internet garbage. And it's just, I love that. I think when games have, and characters in the game have like really unique personality, and it's like I played with Crit, he's a professional Dota 2 player who plays IO. He's like really well known for IO, and there's like kind of an IO equivalent in Deadlock, Ivy, and he literally was just playing Ivy. I'm like, no way. Like, why are you playing Ivy? And he's like, I just saw somebody playing that and that looked fun and it seems broken. And I'm like I haven't even considered Ivy, And it's like, I just think that examples like that are, I'm a carry player and I'm like, wow, what do you know? I want to pick the heroes that buy Ricochet and kill a bunch of jungle creeps. It's like, that's so shocking, not. But, yeah, Slark players, am I right? Yeah, like I've had to kind of detach myself from being a Slark player because
it's all right. Slork is coming soon, and you'll have fun with it.
Dude, I hope they keep that model.
I hope they keep the name, dude. That would be absolutely legendary if they just kept the name, but we'll see. I mean, to be fair, the next hero will be Holiday, or Astro, depending on how cool you are, but that's going to be like hopefully this Thursday. I think we're not 100% on it, but
Fingers crossed.
rumor is we could see the new hero this Thursday, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I think for like in terms of like how the game has changed so quickly, like versus, well, I am curious. What were like your first impressions? You said you're like immediately hooked. How has like your impressions of the game changed just in like the short time you've been playing?
Uh, Impressions of the game. I mean, I guess I overall initially did think that it was like 80% MOBA, and I thought like, oh, that's like what matters. But I think what matters is that you understand that the MOBA aspect is the most important aspect, in the sense that if you don't do that, you just lose. But I don't feel like it's that hard to get the hang of, especially if you've played MOBAs before. So I'm just realizing how big of a difference it is when somebody can aim, somebody can dash jump in the middle of a fight. They can slide backwards on terrain that they know isn't, like, they know what the terrain is without looking at it, you know? And I think just overall, like, map play and terrain play, I guess my impression was not initially that that was so important, but every top level player I'm watching, I'm like, holy shit, they know exactly where everything is, and they know, like, they play upwards a ton, and they're dash sliding everywhere, the infinite ammo while you're sliding. Stuff like this is just, I guess I underestimated how important that was at the very beginning, and now my impression is that. Do you have a similar experience, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think my initial impressions was like, oh, it's gonna be like more of a something similar to like what I saw in other like third person shooter MOBAs, like in that genre. I think Crucible was actually, I mean, for those of you who actually remembered it, it was probably closest to something like Crucible, which I actually really enjoyed and I liked it, but I was like, it doesn't have a lot of depth. And then like I played this game for like a week and I was like, oh my God. It's like there's so much happening, there's so much going on, there's so much cool stuff to learn. And they keep adding new items constantly, and it like changes the like just the introduction of like one or two new items, whether it be like a 500 cost or like a up to a 6300. It's like the
62.
variations, 62, yeah, I forgot they moved it. Yeah. The variations in the item builds, like just from one new item, can change everything. Like you're like, wow, this hero build's completely different, and it's fun, man. Like I think my impressions of the game have only gotten better. Like from each I don't know, from each like week to each patch.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I don't know. I read one patch and I'm like, yeah, that's Ice Frog. Yeah, that's Valve.
Yeah.
Like, I read
Yeah,
one patch
dude.
note. Like, I'm like, let's be honest. I've been a Dota YouTuber for like 6 years, and I've done countless patch reviews, and so I'm way too familiar with like reading through a Dota patch and how it makes you feel reading it. And the one thing about Dota patches, if you're new to Dota, like you haven't played Dota, but you're new to and you're playing Deadlock now, is I think the one thing that Ice Frog and Valve do better than anyone else is you can feel that they play this game, and you can feel that they are talking to people who play this game. Like, these changes, most
So
like
much.
obviously there's missteps here and there, but the changes overall, you just feel like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And they'll like kind of tweak the identity of a hero. Like, even a perfect example, like Wraith, they made it so her cards scale better, but early game they're weaker. But in the past, I felt like cards were just underwhelming, and now you can go the build around the cards because of the way they tweak that. And it's just an example where they're really good at making heroes have multiple choices, and like the depth of the game where you're like, you could talk to 4 different people who have played a hero 100 times, and they'll probably have a different interpretation of like the optimal way to play this character. It's not very linear. It's not like at all. Like, I feel like every game, even if I played Wraith 60 times, it's like, I'm gonna go into Sandbox and refine my build a bit. I feel like this should be different or whatever. I learned something different this game. So the depth is insanely in depth. It's there. And it's like one of those things where every time you think like, okay, I kind of figured this out, my build seems good now. Nope. Like, next game you learn something, and that's like the exact same feeling as Dota. And yeah, I mean, That's it.
You can really tell that they do listen to the community though, like so heavily, because like back in the day, back when I first started playing, like you could submit feedbacks on the forum and be like, like maybe think, like, maybe do this, maybe do that. Like these are some things I've noticed while playing. The power runes was literally a forum feedback that I submitted back in June, being like, because they used to exist inside the breakable containers and they were like temporary power runes, and I was like, I feel like this is just too much RNG for the game. Like, would it be possible to institute like a set location where power runes spawn like X amount of minutes, similar to like what they do in Dota? And then they did, and they added 4 power rune spots, and now it's just bridge buffs. And so you can, and it was like it happened so fast. Like this was all within a course of 1 month. They completely revamped like how power runes and upgrades like exist in the game, and it was all based on like community feedback. It's not like I was the only one who submitted this. This was stuff that like a lot of people had theory crafted, and Valve was like, yeah, let's just see how it goes. Like, why not? Like we're in alpha, we're in beta. Like we don't care completely changing the play of the game as long as it results in a better product. And the moment that change happened was the day where I was like, hell yeah, man, I'm in. I'm so in. Like this game is like gonna be so solid because like they're actually listening to the player base. You can tell that like you said, the dev team, the people that work on this are passionate and play the game themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like we've talked about so many reasons why we're enthusiastic about this game. We hope if you're watching or listening that you either already share this, or maybe you haven't really dived into Deadlock as much as we have, and maybe we've given you like a bit of inspiration or sparked your curiosity about what exactly this game has to offer. I feel like, we wanted this episode to be just kind of an intro to the whole thing, what we love about Deadlock as a whole, not a specific topic, just what comes to mind. Why do we love this so much? Why are we doing this? And I think we just look forward to this being a way to deliver you guys our consistent journey through this new game, this new community, the goods, the bads, the ups, the downs, the process, and just creating a space for us to talk about it. So I'm excited for what's to come. And I know you are too. Yeah.
I really am. Do we want to, before we wrap things up here on the first episode, do we want to talk about the episode 2? Because it actually is coming a little bit sooner than people might expect.
Yeah, let's definitely like let people know what we're doing, generally speaking, and when we're doing it, so they can keep up.
Right on. All right. So the goal here, everybody, is we're going to be doing this as like a weekly podcast. We'll be doing a new episode every week, but we are changing the schedule from where it is today, which is Friday morning. We're going to be Friday morning for me, Friday evening for you. But we are going to be moving it to Monday. Pretty much same time, but on Monday. So that means episode number 2 is coming in just a few days after the weekend.
Yeah, and the patch day is always Thursday, and we had talked about if we wanted to do it right after the patch day, but we thought it's a cool idea to like kind of give people a chance to play out the new heroes, if there are any, like play over the weekend, kind of like start the week with like, what are we thinking going into like a new fresh week. And overall, we don't want to spoil anything, and we also don't want to commit to anything, because we're going to be trying a bunch of different ideas. We're going to be really just exploring the discussion topics within Deadlock, and we are doing this weekly and seeing like over time where it takes us. So we hope you guys join us on that journey there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, final thoughts, Brian, before we, I guess, wrap up episode 1?
Just say final thoughts are that we're going to be posting this on Spotify, my YouTube channel for Deadlock. It'll be live on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/bananasamjamma. But we also plan to be getting it on your stream, twitch.tv/rkryptic, as you see beneath his name. So make sure that if you're interested, follow any and all of those that you would prefer to listen to it on, and we'll keep you guys posted at exactly where it's going to be. So.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm so glad we finally got started on this. We had wanted to start it a while ago, but things happen.
Hacked. My life.
I didn't want to say it.
My life imploded overnight. Like I can just tell you guys, hold close to your internet belongings, because I had never conceptualized what it would feel like to lose all of your internet. Like, it's on my computer, it's mine, you know? It doesn't work that way. So, but here we are. I'm excited. I'm sad it got delayed, but just in time, you know, TI ended for Dota. We get to kind of like wrap up that season and start anew. So I think it's still good timing regardless.
Hell yeah. All right, everyone. As always, we're going to say thank you all so much for listening, watching, wherever that may be. You made it through the first episode of Deadlock and Load. There's going to be many more to come, but we will see you all next time. Have a wonderful evening.
Peace. Thanks, Ricky. I'll talk to you later, buddy. See ya.
Peace.
Peace.
I got to go to work anyway.
Nerd.
Yeah. Just, you know, poor people things.
Okay. See ya, dude.
See ya.